Hey gang, it's Eli here with another Farlorian Friday bonus for you, our kind and generous donors. And this week, I want to talk about stupid music. So I grew up listening to a lot of silly things, like my mom's Monty Python records and Dr. Demento on the radio. And later on, I got into people like Raymond Scott, who I still adore, sort of swing era composer whose music ended up in a lot of cartoons. And all that silliness kind of ended up stashed away in my brain, and it just kind of pops up from time to time, like when I'm doing Other Bothers. And so for the third episode of The End of Time and Other Bothers, Darcy ends up at a carnival. I wanted a little bit of circusy music played on a calliope, and I didn't want it to be Entrance of the Gladiators, which is that one that goes... So I came up with a melody that sort of noodles around in that same kind of way. It's a little bit kind of off kilter. Like the chord progression is a little bit weird because it doesn't have a lot of your typical cadences. Not deliberately, it was just kind of following my nose and seeing what sounded good. There's none of this, or there's none of this, which you would kind of expect in a typical circus march. It's all built on these four chords. And those kind of buzz and bop around, but they never feel like they kind of land anywhere safe. It's always a little bit up in the air, a little bit unsettled. Like this feels like it's the tonal center, but there's no 4 chord, there's no 5 chord. It's just this. So I didn't have anything like a calliope, so I dug around online and found this instrument available for free. And that's a software instrument sampled from an Orgue Barbarie, which is a French barrel organ, and doubled that with a sampled pipe organ that came with Logic. And together they had, more or less the kind of sound I was after. It sounds kind of like a fairground. Maybe it's, an organ that's been out in the weather a little bit. So to give it a little more character, I changed it to a different tuning, kind of a subtle change. But the important thing is that it makes it sound a little less like a synthesizer, a little more like a real-world instrument. So there's your fairground music. For the next episode, episode 4, we had the now infamous kitchen scene. And it was so ridiculous and threw poor Mike for such a loop. And as I was sitting there watching the meters on the recorder, I just knew I wanted to heighten the craziness with some equally crazy out there music. Something that's kind of cute to start out with, but gets more and more weird and unhinged as it goes on. So I went back to that same melody and just changed up the instrumentation. I figured jazzy was probably the way to go. Now, being that I'm using a lot of stock software instruments, they don't have a whole lot of expression. Like I can bend notes on it, but it's going to be pretty obvious that it's a software synthesizer. Like on a real guitar, there's just certain things that happen to the tone when you bend a note or slide up the neck or something that just aren't there on a sample. So the jazz, quote unquote, that I'm making it's like a kind of a square 1960s version of jazz, like TV theme music jazz, very little stiff and upright and cleaned up. That works pretty well for our purposes here, I think. So for the first half of the kitchen scene, it's fairly innocuous, but things start to go a little sideways as things start talking to Mike, and I started bending the pitch. So what I did was in Reaper, in the episode session file, I made a copy of the music track and put a pitch shift plugin on it and just slowly bent the pitch up and down, and that creates this wavering effect, like all of a sudden the ground is shifting beneath you. That rock solid tuning is starting to drift. It's like gravity is shifting. And then when we return to the kitchen a few scenes later, obviously it's completely over the top. And I originally thought I'd have this big, skronky, psychedelic fuzz guitar come in and stomp on everything. But then I had this sudden horrible, horrible brainwave, which was, what if it was Trololo? And if for some reason you have not experienced Trololo, go and look it up on YouTube. It is a Russian song from the 1970s. It's from the Soviet era. I will not describe it here. Go look it up. Trololo, all one word. Yeah, that. I did in fact sing lo 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 in there, kind of as an homage, I guess. But for the most part, the characters in this scene are animate food and utensils, and they would obviously sound more like this. So yeah, all of these voices are me. I did about 10 takes, I think, in all, singing through the whole song at 2 different speeds. And Reaper makes this easy. I just told it change playback speed to 75%. Don't preserve the pitch. Did the recording and then just sped it up again. That has the added bonus, since I'm singing slower, it also makes it easier to sing this complicated melody. La 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 la. So I did a few tracks at 3/4 speed. And then a few more at 2/3 speed. La 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 la. Recording at 2 speeds gives it some variety, since like the timbre of my voice is going to change because I'm using different parts of my range, or straining at like the edges of my range. And it makes it less obvious that it's all me doing the singing. And of course, the great thing about playing a singing food ingredient is that no one expects you to be any good. So I got to kind of let loose and be as obnoxiously bad as possible. So I got all those recorded, brought them back into Logic, and it sounds kind of like this. So there's the kitchen chaos. So before the kitchen scene, there's kind of a dreamy sequence where Egerton is like drifting through the glade over the Fey Stone. And I remembered a little something I discovered when I was making like dorky, artsy sound collages in my university radio days, which is that if you take Celtic harp music and put it through a long, long delay and just let it pile up, let those copies overlap each other over and over again until you can't really make out the tune anymore. All the notes kind of disappear and you get this nice wash of pretty sound. So I did that with the kitchen music theme, played it on harp, and I had to alter the melody because with the chord progression, as I mentioned, it's very weird, and there's key changes all over the place, and those discordant notes would kind of ruin the effect. So adjusted the melody so that it was more diatonic, more on the white notes, and put it through a ton of delay and reverb, and you get this nice wash of sound. And then when Egerton disappears into the Fey Stone, he sort of squeezes in and disappears with a pop. So that's just one big blink on the harp. And then reverb added to that, and then flipped around. So it's reversed. So there you go. That is the story of the Rolling Scones Bacon Cake music. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.